It's Mark with Anatomy of Tone. I want to discuss how we can choose different options of sounds, of modes and scales to play over a major chord. To assist with this, I've been using the Composers and Improvisers toolkit because it has all the modes arranged by color. So in other words, every mode that works over a major tonality will be listed here and let you know what tensions you get. There seems to be a disconnect for many about how to use modes. Sometimes people will learn what the modes are, but then aren't able to effectively use them over a piece of music. And then some people just don't understand what the modes technically are, but sometimes they're able to use them but not have as much control over them. In this particular video, I'm going to dig into how they work and how to use multiple modes or try different modes over a major chord. In a future video, I'm going to dig in deeper to talk about how to make them sound more musical. But first, let's just get to be able to understand the principle of how modes and modal interchange works. I think one of the best ways to work this out is to look at a mind map that I drew, which is a system that was designed to lay things out in a way that our brain actually likes to categorize them. Once you understand this basic concept, I think you're going to see that the modes themselves are not hard to understand. They're often explained in a way that is more confusing than they need to be, right? They shouldn't be that hard to understand, and they're not, but they are made more complicated. So I'm going to simplify that in this video by breaking it down, looking at the mind map, and just talking about how many different options we have to use different modes over just a simple major chord. The biggest takeaway is if you have a major chord, you have the 1, 3, and 5. Well, any mode or scale that shares the same exact notes as the 1, 3, 5, the major chord, is going to be a great candidate to use on top of the major chord because they have 3 common tones, and the 3 notes that are in the chord are common tones within the mode. That is like the biggest thing to remember, right? So they have a commonality, something that links them together. All the notes that aren't those 3 common tones are up for grabs. We can play with them and change their quality to make them create more tension or different colors. And we can see in our diagram here that I have written a major triad. So it's the 1, 3, 5 from a major scale. So if we're talking about the key of C, it's C, E, G. No, this is a mind map, and I've created branches for the subcategories of different types of modes, right? So these are the different types of Mixolydian modes that will work over this major triad. Why do they work? Well, because the Mixolydian mode shares the same 3 notes as the major triad, the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th, so the C, E, and G. Mixolydian flat 6 also has C, E, and G in it, and Mixolydian flat 2 also has C, E, and G in it. We're going to find that is the case for Lydian sharp 2, has C, E, and G in it, 3 notes from our major triad. The Lydian dominant does, and Lydian does. Okay. Now we have a couple other options: harmonic major, Ionian, which is the major scale, and the Phrygian dominant mode. All of these scales can be played over a major triad. Now, this gets trickier if whoever is playing the harmony or the chord plays more than a triad. So if they start putting a 7th in the chord, then that starts changing the options that we have for playing over this major triad, and we'd have to check the diagram in the Composers and Improvisers toolkit to see which modes will work over a dominant chord. But first, starting with the major triad is a great way to get an idea of how to use modes for a different color on top of a chord, right? A simple triad. So I would suggest you try it. Or create a loop with a C major chord, and then play Mixolydian for a little bit. Right? Then play Ionian for a little bit. Then try Phrygian dominant for a little bit. All just playing over the same C major chord. Slow, right? Slow. Like really get a sense of what makes Phrygian dominant sound different than harmonic major. But not just the fact that they sound different, but how do they sound different? Can you describe what they remind you of? Do you have any kind of imagery or sense of how you can associate that sound? Right? And that's eventually how you know how to use Mixolydian flat 2 or Phrygian dominant. At first, you may be experimenting to just see what each of them has, but over time you build a memory of those, and when you're in a situation you say, oh, you know what, harmonic minor would be the perfect color for what is being played right now. And that is ideally how we end up using these modes. Right now, I'm just talking about using them over a single chord. We're not tying these into longer progressions yet, but a similar philosophy carries that if you want to go from one major triad to another major triad, well, all these modes are still options over a major chord. If we're playing a C major chord, then C Locrian sharp 2 is an option, or C Phrygian dominant is an option. But if we go to E major triad, well then E Lydian sharp 2 is an option, or E Phrygian dominant is an option. So you see that we're also following the modes with the chord or the key center. Good to be aware of what your tonic is. This is where I think people fundamentally get confused about modes. People are often aware that other modes exist, but they don't know how to pair them. And that is something I tried to cure by color coding in the Composers and Improvisers toolkit by creating categories by major triad, minor triad, augmented, diminished, dominant, and that way you can see the possibilities for experimenting with different modes on top of a chord where all the modes share the chord tones in common. Let's start by just playing a simple C chord, a major triad, right? We have the 1, we have the 3, and the 5. Now, there's a lot of different modes that we can use on top of this simple triad. Just simply the Ionian or the major scale. Now, I can also play Lydian. Okay, if I want to go out even further, what about Lydian sharp 2? That's spicier, right? But you notice it still has the same 1, 3, and 5 in it, so that's what makes it a good candidate. It's just a different color, and it has more tension than the major scale, which is... right? Lydian sharp 2. Now, we could either use those notes as tensions on top of a chord. We can just build a whole piece of music horizontally using that scale and harmonizing it with notes just from the Lydian sharp 2 scale. There's a lot of options we have in how we can develop or experiment with that sound. There's a lot more modes that'll actually work over that, right? For instance, Mixolydian flat 6 will also work. So it's a Mixolydian mode with a flat 6. Here's major. Now here's Mixolydian flat 6. Different tense sound in it because we have this flat 6 in it. Now, I do think it's important to either have a loop that plays the chord underneath it or just sit at a piano. Even if you're a guitar player, a piano is an amazing instrument to practice at because we can play harmony and melody at the same time. Let's just listen to the chord, and now I'm going to play some different modes on top of it. Let's start with just the C major, the Ionian. I'm trying not to play with too much rhythm because I don't want to complicate it. I just want to listen to the various sounds on top of the chord and get a sense of where the tension is and how to resolve it. Let's do Lydian sharp 2. Mixolydian flat 6. I would play everything painfully slow when you're first trying these modes out to get a sense of the flavor that each tension adds. And you can only really do that by listening, playing no rhythm, but playing extra slow, like. One mistake that people make when learning how to play with modes is they don't anchor it with a chord. It's really hard to get a sense of what that flat 6 is going to sound like unless you're hearing it against the triad. What you have to develop is a sense before you play it of what that might sound like. Some days I'm just sitting here and playing and looking at the toolkit, and I'm like, oh, well, let's see, what am I going to try today? I'm going to try a harmonic major. I haven't played that over a major chord in a long time. So harmonic major is a major scale with a flat 6 in it. 2, 3, 4, 5, flat 6, major 7, right? It's got an exotic sound to it. Okay, let's try something using the Phrygian flat 6. Make sure we're playing that, right? That chord below the scale to be able to hear it. Now let's play it really slow so we can get to the way it sounds. Let's make a motif up and maybe try something that's a third apart, right? So. Just playing a C triad in the left hand, and I just went up thirds using the Phrygian flat 6 scale. And it works because I found a great point to resolve it. When you hear that flat 6 wants to fall, right? Let's try to go with gravity of where the tensions are. You can see where the tensions are in the toolkit. So for instance, I can see and hear that Phrygian flat 6. Yep, we got a flat 7, we have a 9, 11, and a flat 13th. Yep, and that's right. So even before I play the scale, I can get a vibe of what kind of tensions are there. So let's say I didn't want something with the regular 9, I want something with a flat 9 in it, because I like that sound, flat 9, flat 13th. So I could play Phrygian dominance. This is another way that I'm using the Composers and Improvisers toolkit, because now I just saw like I could even push it further. Well, I want to do something with a flat 9 on it, right? I could play something with a flat 9 on it now. Phrygian dominant. I mean, there's more than I just showed, but even that is a lot of material to be able to experiment with. So just remember that the key is to take them one at a time and very, very slowly, right? So I'm going to start with the first one, C major, and I'm just going to try that Phrygian dominant. Remember, it's not just about knowing how to play through them with your fingers. It's trying to build an association with your brain of what they sound like. And you can't do that when you're playing super loud, right? You need to be able to sit and let those notes ring above the triad. Get comfortable being uncomfortable with the dissonance, because that's what you have to recognize later. Right? Sour, sweet. Right? So there's all tensions are like that. Sour, sweet, right? You can find the Composers and Improvisers Toolkit on my website, anatomyoftone.com.